Thank you. All right, so I'm calling us to order at 3 o'clock. I need an approval of the agenda.
Approve the agenda.
Thank you. Moved by Chris, seconded by
Cornelia, Ben.
Ben. Yes, right. We've got Ben, Cornelia as Ben today. And then we have Jenna Sabrina. Okay, we have a number of different personalities again today. All right, and that brings us to public comment 3. Do we have anyone who would like to make public comment? Ellen.
And how many minutes do I have?
3.
I'm gonna type, okay, I'm gonna type myself.
Oh, great.
As my term as ESD senator comes to an end, I've been reflecting on some of the work that we've done during my 3 years. And I wanted to express some concerns I've had about what has and has not been agendized at Senate meetings this year. And who has or has not been invited to present on topics that fall under 10+1 under faculty purview. So, and I'm going to try to do this in 3 minutes. First, I wanted to highlight some of our important work that was left in progress last year that I hope we can, the Senate, the incoming senators and the ongoing senators can pick up next year. The first is actually, it was on the agenda last time, which is the Senate subcommittee structure. And there's, I'm happy to share my actual notes if you want to add them to the minutes for last time. I have links. But Rayanne presented last May on the extensive work that had been done since 2018 on our subcommittee structure, including the support we got from Jeffrey Dyer as our mentor last year. And at a meeting earlier this semester, Ruth Morales had asked that it be agendized and received assurance from you, Melanie, that it would be. It was on last week's or the last agenda, but I was disappointed to find that it was not agendized again for this week. I know there's a lot on the agenda, but I just think that's important to follow up on. There was also a resolution that we spent a lot of work on last year that had to do with instructional material costs for students. And it was passed last May 11th, and it included the expectation that the Senate would develop language to add to our existing policies, procedures, and processes that address several areas related to this, including that faculty members must not receive profits or royalties on material that they require their students to purchase. I'm skipping one of them because I don't have time, but I also wanted to address 2 things I had concerns about from this week's agenda. And it has to do with who is invited to present on matters of 10+1 under faculty purview. And this is, not personally about the 2 administrators I'm going to name, but it's more about the process for the Senate. One was the discussion with VP of HR, Demetrius Lewis, about the faculty hiring pilot. That's something that was a Senate initiative started by Rayanne Napoleon, led by Melissa Menendez originally as part of an ad hoc Senate subcommittee. Faculty hiring is clearly under 10+1. And so I think when there's a discussion about that, that needs to be led by faculty.
And I think.
Okay. And the other one I will say when we get there, because it has to do with a presentation about library.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? No? No one else? All right. Moving on, we have approval of the minutes. So we have one that got lost in the shuffle, the February 22nd, and then the April 12th minutes. Any corrections to those minutes? All right, hearing no corrections, the minutes will be approved as written. All right, and
Okay, are you ready for me?
yes,
Okay, point of order.
point of order.
I would like to request that we reorder the agenda. I would like to bring 7.01 to the agenda now.
Okay. Right.
And And I'm very happy to tell you that we are back after COVID, a long stretch of not having a faculty lecture and not having a presentation due to many, many complications, as you well know. That and we've had the forums out for a long time, and our choice couldn't have been any better, I don't think, for this particular time. And it's Nathan Kreitzer, who will be our next faculty lecturer. And I think we have a picture up here of when we ambushed him in class last week. And poor guy, we actually, I mean, it's always such a shock. They see us come in and it's like they take like, who are these people?
Yeah, why are they?
Why are they here? And then all of a sudden, it's like they want to run from the room. So I'm sure that you all know of Nathan. He and Jim Mui did an amazing job during COVID of providing us with a lot of amazing music. He has been here since actually 1994. He said, starting adjunct and full-time 97. But his choir of voices has just performed all over the world, really, and still performing. And I couldn't be more thrilled that he's going to be our next faculty lecturer. And I would like someone to make a motion to approve this for us.
I'll move it. That's an honor to get to do that one. Moved by Kim and seconded by Ben. Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, looking at that,
Okay,
it's
so
unanimous.
Do you have two words you'd like to tell us, Nathan?
Well, thank you all, I think, and I hope I live up to the expectations and the previous faculty lecturers. And, but if you show up, you're gonna be involved.
Okay, good. He's already been thinking.
Gotta sit down, go.
He's already been
Thank
thinking,
you,
so.
and if I find out who nominated me,
Well, you know, to students, faculty, staff, administrators, so it's a history of nominations. It's not just a single year. So this is a cumulative thing that we look at over all the years.
Okay.
So
So you
just
can't
so,
just pick one person.
yeah, you can't blame one person.
Yeah.
great show of Broadway music sung by our large choir this Sunday at First Methodist on Mother's Day at 3 p.m. Please feel free, and then choir voices the next weekend at the hopefully still open St. Andrews.
And if you want to know more about Nathan, you go to his website, nathankreitzer.com.
Okay, stop, we have a full agenda. Okay, right. Okay, I am stopping you on this one.
Thank you. Oh, Anne's one of our committee members. Sorry, Anne.
All right, and so we are now going back to number 5.
Is that freaking fast enough?
It was. Well done. Right, the man actually taught me how to sing, so he's a wonder maker. So we have, now we're on to 5 with our reports. You can find the liaison reports there. The president's report, I just want to hit a few key things. First of all, and this is coming up soon, we are going to get to welcome our new president elect and our new senators, which will be exciting. And then I just want to circle back to 2 things, one of which has been taking a while, but when we were doing the faculty hiring, I said we would get back to you about Umoja. So just some information about that Umoja position, and you will be updated about that at the summer Senate meeting, the heads up about that. And then regarding women's lacrosse, since our last meeting, I've been following up on the status of women's lacrosse, meeting with different people, including Linda Dozer, who is our Title IX coordinator. And she says that SBCC is in compliance with Title IX regulations for our intercollegiate athletic sports programs. Since we're in compliance, there are 2 other issues that Rayanne raised in her PowerPoint. Curriculum for intercollegiate athletics lacrosse team and turning women's lacrosse into an intercollegiate sport. So first of all, hats off to the people that do this regularly. It's very, very complicated. So if I have overly simplified this, just trying to make it clear.
I had a question. Is that?
Why don't let me
Yeah,
just
sure.
finish this and then we'll see. Right, club teams are elevated to intercollegiate status when all of the necessary components, interest, ability, and available intercollegiate competition are present. So to bridge the gap from a club team to an intercollegiate team, the 3C2A allows colleges to apply for emerging sports status, which effectively acts as a transition between club team and intercollegiate team. And this provides a pathway to become a recognized intercollegiate sport at the 3C2A level. And currently, the emerging sport designation is applied for and tracked for 2 years. If at the end of those 2 years, there is sufficient interest, including local teams to play against, the sport becomes, quote, an emerging sport, unquote. But sometimes that 2 years is too little. So about 4 years ago, SBCC's Ellen O'Connor began suggesting that the 2-year window should be lengthened. Last year, she wrote legislation for the State Gender Equity Committee to expand the 2 years into 5, extending the time frame to document interest, which would make it easier to award emerging sports status. So I think we should be proud that SBCC is at the forefront of making it easier to apply for and receive emerging sports status. Once a sport becomes an intercollegiate sport, then the PE department can put forward curriculum for that sport. Until recognized as an intercollegiate sport, SBCC lacrosse will compete as a club sport. According to the Office of Civil Rights Attorney, who is in charge of athletic Title IX compliance, the best way to support this effort is to take affirmative steps forward, such as any steps consistent with the 13 components used to judge equivalent treatment of student athletes. And that can include things like scheduling, coaching, uniforms, tutoring, facilities, equipment and supplies, publicity. This type of support would need to be given to all SBCC club teams. At the moment, we have one other SBCC club team, which is a men's lacrosse club team. Finally, though, for the immediate future, club sports will continue to be under student life. But SBCC will be developing a process or structure to appropriately support club teams. And above all, thanks to all of the athletes on those teams, varsity and club, to the families, the coaches, to the advisors, and the athletic directors who support them. Ellen?
A couple of questions. So one was, you said we're under Title IX compliance now, which was my understanding, but it was also my understanding that that could change in the very near future.
I talked to Linda Dozer, who does not seem to be worried. That's
Okay.
what she does.
And then the other thing is, are we prevented from developing curriculum now before we're not allowed to develop?
It's not an
curriculum now?
it's not an intercollegiate sport
And so we're not allowed to develop
because
curriculum until it
PE would
is.
have to
Okay,
put that.
Until it's an intercollegiate sport, there's no point.
there's no point, or we're not allowed to? Because I think there's no point is a matter of opinion,
Well,
but we're not allowed to as a matter of. Law.
It would be a course for women's lacrosse
Mhm.
as an intercollegiate sport, which doesn't exist.
Okay, and then my last question is, what was the process for making this decision? Just as something that was brought to the Senate to ask for Senate input on this, I'm curious what who the decision makers were and how this played out in terms of the additional support, but still being under student life and all that.
So you're asking who is at the meeting? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm not asking what, yeah.
Yeah,
What,
so
what
student life,
governing body made that decision?
it was a group of people.
Okay.
I told you guys that I had put together last time that I had put together a meeting when I saw the first presentation. And I thought I would reach out to all sorts of people who were involved in this. And so it was a really broad range. It had people from athletics, student life, academic affairs, very, very broad range.
Okay, so I'm assuming that people involved in the lacrosse The
No,
current
no
lacrosse club were
one,
part
no
of
one,
that?
because it wasn't specifically about lacrosse.
Okay,
It was about these other questions.
okay, thank you.
All right. Also on, the president's report, there's still work to be done at BPAP. BPAP is still meeting next week, so, I know that this is everybody's favorite part. It's almost the middle of an agenda, right? So no one's noticed this, but there's all hot links there, so if you want to take a look at those, that would be great. We are meeting next week, so please give me a shout if there's anything that you're interested in or anything that your department's concerned about. All right, moving on to 6, which is information. We have our Senate Committee year-end reports. Those are coming in. They're incomplete right now. I will fill those in and I will send those separately around to you as updates once we have them all together. Our noble delegate, Tara, summarized the key resolution of the spring plenary, which is attached on that PDF. Do you want to say anything or should we keep going?
I will just say that a number of the resolutions echo some of our conversations here in this room this year, including continued conversations on academic freedom, which is on our agenda today, and some of the tension points I think are very eye-opening, because for some folks, when they think about academic freedom, it's this concern that someone's going to dictate to them that they diversify their courses and their curriculum as if that's going to impinge upon their free rights. And that's, of course, the antithesis of what academic freedom is. It's about having multiple perspectives, including those perspectives that have been historically marginalized. And so it really echoed for me that our approach about including DEIA, including support for part-time and adjunct faculty is the right approach. So I was very pleased to be able to hear that conversation in real time and see that a lot of our consortium of California community colleges are grappling with this issue as well. There were also a few resolutions that are also on today's agenda about changing the language about things like academic probation and all of the support is there. There's also a very interesting resolution in the next where you could just read my report. But it is about changing some of our policies about how many times a student can repeat a course. There's a new Assembly Bill 411 by Pong, and have a look at that. And so the ASCCC firmly supports that resolution. It's rare. ASCCC supports an Assembly Bill these days, but that is one that I think truly is student-centered. Those are the highlights.
Well, that was so tempting. I'm sure everyone now is going to think, ooh, Assembly Bill 411. I have to look that one up. Thank you. It's a super thorough report, so thank you for that. That brings us to the exciting 6.03. And do we have, is Darren here today? Okay. Then we have Carrie Hutchins. Stand up. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. From Communication and English's own Joshua Escobar. And they are our Faculty Excellence Award winners this year. So let's have a round. Outstanding award, service to the college, and I'm glad you're here because can I have like a drum roll? Okay, also please eat cake. $2,000 will be awarded to each of you from the foundation. Wow. And I believe that will be ongoing from now on for our Excellence Award winners.
If it's not, it's awesome. You can.
Yeah, so supported by the foundation. Thank you very much. Anything you would like to say?
You didn't prepare us for that.
I did. No, thank you is just fine.
I will just quickly take the opportunity to say thank you so much. It's a huge honor here for over 20 years, and it's my heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears when I just cherish this institution. I'm happy to be a part of making it better every day alongside you and all the hard work you all do in this room and everywhere else. So thank you.
Thank you.
As a poet, I was like, I can't wait to say something. But I just wanted to say, like, when Amanda Gorman read and inspired the whole nation with poetry, I thought it was like a new moment for us, and I wanted to make the most of it, because as a poet, you know that moments don't last very long. So I just want to thank you all for believing in me tremendously and taking such a big swing with me and a lot of my endeavors, and I really appreciate that. It's really fun.
And now maybe the best news for you is you don't need to stay. Totally. And on your way out, please take the gate. Yes, right. Good. At home. Did everybody catch the actually? Did you-
Well, you know, yeah, really good. Surprise. There.
All right, so now
Nothing you make is
the
good.
next item might not happen.
Did you get the email from Beth?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, yeah. So, Beth Taylor Schott, who is going to talk to us, about happenings at the, library, had a dental emergency, which sounds totally terrifying.
Yeah, that's really bad.
And has to not be here, so. So, we will just move that. Maybe to the summer meeting, maybe to fall. All right,
Can I make a public comment on that item, even though we're moving it?
sure.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. So the thing I wanted to say specifically about that was in the context of what I said before about who was invited to present at Senate. And when it was on the agenda last time, it included reference to the FPSS committee, which, as you know, is a Senate subcommittee. And it also said that Marit might attend. She's the chair of that subcommittee. So I honestly didn't know what this was about, but it sounded like it might be more related to tutoring. So I apologize, I didn't follow up on it then, but what I wanted to highlight now that I've seen the slides is that there are many elements in Beth's presentation that are programmatic related to the library program, clearly fall under faculty purview under 10+1. And I think that actually goes for leadership of tutoring through FPSS. But certainly, you know, more to my area of expertise, it definitely goes to leadership of library resources and instruction and academic support, which is squarely under 10+1. And so it's disappointing to me that the Senate leadership did not reach out to library faculty first. Or in addition, to invite us to present to the Senate, the faculty governing body, on an item of 10+1 that is under faculty purview, particularly when there is a librarian who is a sitting senator. Thankfully, and I had hoped that I could say this with Beth here, but it will be recorded for the record. We're glad that she was receptive. All of the full-time library faculty met with her yesterday. She was receptive to our concerns, and she invited me to present one of the slides, the one that has to do mostly with the library vision for the future, the programmatic vision. And I think, you know, she's a new dean, so I don't put this on her. I put this squarely on the shoulders of the Senate leadership and steering when scheduling the agenda and like I said in my previous comment with another item on the agenda too, if there are issues that fall under 10+1, faculty should be invited to present on them, not administrators. And those faculty can then decide if it makes sense to also include the administrator, or you can invite the administrator as a resource. But it is, I think it undermines our shared governance and our, you know, the faculty voice when it's done that way. So thank you for hearing that comment.
Thank you. As someone who's part of Senate leadership, I don't see a dean or a VP speaking to us as an arrogation of Senate purview. I see it as us getting to hear from those people. There's nothing that stops us from asking them questions. There's nothing that
Except
stops us.
there is
I'm still
an
speaking.
information item.
Yeah, well, okay, but what we could do, as you know, as you well know, right, is if it's an information item and people want to discuss, then we put it on as a discussion item. And it was supposed to have gone last week. I thought this might have happened. And had it gone last week, and which it didn't, then we would have been able to have the discussion this week, to have been able to, or last week, last meeting, right? We ran out of time, and so we didn't have the chance to have that and be able to bring her back.
I think it's unlikely if it were on a topic such as programmatic changes related to the way biology labs are run, that had a component in terms of the physical setup of biology labs that was primarily about instruction. I can't imagine that the science dean would be invited without biology faculty being invited. So
Well, we'll
thank
give
you
you,
for considering.
we'll give you the last word on that, and I do appreciate that. It will be, we're losing your library expertise, and that will be a loss for us for sure.
I'm sure I'll be back to make more public comment.
All right. All right, that brings us to, oh, wait, a vice president. Got one of those right here, right? So, and this is a new set of slides, I believe, that we have,
An updated.
updated set of
Yes,
slides, okay.
that's fine. How do okay, I think this will be too easy. I don't want to touch it, but thank you. So thank you for putting me on the agenda again. I'm not going to go through the entire presentation that I have already sort of covered at various settings with many of the presidents. But what I did want to do is to kind of share with you the summary changes of the reconfiguration project. We are very, very close to finalizing it, formalizing it officially. And I have 3 slides just to remind everyone of what the goals of the reconfiguration in academic affairs were. There's 4 solid goals. One is to assess the workload across the divisions to make it more equitable, more effective, more efficient. Number 2, to balance out the workload if there was an area that seemed to have a disproportionate amount of workload attached to it. We are going to balance that out. The reconfiguration project does that, in our opinion. And if it works, to establish this as a mechanism moving forward to making sure that the areas are equitable in terms of workload. And the final one is to do so in a fiscally responsible way, meaning that it will not cost a penny. So I'm very proud of that. That's why I'm sharing that with you. Here are the summary of changes. These areas are the ones that ended up being impacted by the reconfiguration. You can see dual enrollment as far as the instructional responsibilities and duties are going from student affairs to academic affairs under Dean Medell. Career Center is going from Medell to Taylor Schott. Addictive disorders courses going from Dean Imhoff to Alan Price. And School of Modern Languages with ESL, they requested to stay together. That was one of the main requests. It's going from Dean Imhoff to Dean Taylor Schott. We think there's some really exciting opportunities with those connections there. With the library, the writing center, tutoring services, etc. Physical education is going from Dean Kuhn to Dean Medell, primarily when Dean Kuhn was hired for that role. That area was not part of the original job description, and he has been doing that in addition ever since. Employer engagement, which is kind of a new area for us, going from Dean Medell to Dean Price, and the catalog from Dean Imhoff to Dean Taylor Schott are the main changes. So we're going from our previously shared org chart to this new one, where we can see all the departments listed under each one of the areas. Although visually it may not seem like it's equitable. Once we dig into the data that we absolutely looked at, number of sections, number of faculty, number of part-timers, those kinds of things. I can assure you, it's much more equitable than what it used to be, and to the point where we all felt comfortable supporting it. At this point, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer, or feedback, I'm happy to listen to. Otherwise, I'm also very happy to give back my 2 minutes to the Senate to distribute as you see fit.
Any questions at all?
Thank you. I think that'll, happy for the dean to get it closer.
Thank you for that, and I'm most happy for the area whose dean didn't really have the bandwidth to give it the attention that they deserve. So I think that is really exciting for them as well.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Are we good? Any other questions? No questions?
Thank you so
Alright.
much.
Thanks to Kathy, we managed 7.01 already, so that brings us to 7.02.
I just want to do the 6.06, which I
Yeah.
mentioned that
Did I?
already, but this might feel like we're our new.
I'm so
No
sorry.
worries, okay. So they're here. Thank you, guys. So Danielle is here for 1 year for Ruth's term. Then we have Christy Brandt from Educational Support. And that's a new term after Ellen is off. Katie Laris is here from Fine Arts, as Joyce will be off after this. And then Kathy returns. So welcome back. And then we just to remind you that the part-time credit senator, IT hasn't gotten me into the email list, but as soon as they do, I send a quick note to the credit part-time faculty about the election, and it happens at the beginning of fall. That's per the Constitution. So that's the last one we'll have left to seat that last senator. So yay, how about, can we have applause for?
And
Oh, that was how early Maria was done, sorry.
wow, gave us back 2 minutes, Maria. So
Very kind of me.
this is very kind of you. All right, 7.02, our vice president election. As you can see there, according to the Senate Constitution, the vice president should be elected by the academic senate through nominations of senators. The vice president shall be a sitting member of the academic senate at the time of election, which is now, and the election will be held at the last meeting of the spring semester, which is also now. So, do we have any nominations? Elizabeth?
I nominate Sarah.
I'll second that. Second nominated, second. Anyone else? Any other nominations?
Not a shocker.
Don't worry you, but that's like the most evil laugh she's done all year. Just incredibly evil. All right, so I think we need to have this. Do we want to do this by voice vote, or do we want to have a roll call?
Roll call, so I guess pretty.
Ellen?
I have a question. I'm just wondering, I can't remember dating back 3 years ago. Is it the new senators who vote for the incoming vice president or the outgoing senators who have a vote? Like, I'm
It's
wondering
it's
which one of them.
It's the
Outgoing,
outgoing, they are
because
not
they're-
seated till the end.
And yeah,
Okay.
they're not seated until
That's
after
correct.
graduation is
Okay.
is the weird technical
Yeah,
term.
you're on the cookies of graduation.
Yeah,
So is Sally, by the way. For
Oh.
being department chair, tell Sally that.
Oh, yeah, I was hoping it's July 1st. But I'm chair starting
Never seen Sally so happy.
at 7 PM on Friday.
all right,
So
all right.
Kurt-
I can't wait to do this. Okay, Ben?
Yes.
Right, I had a feeling about that. Sabrina?
Yeah.
All right, Ellen?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yeah.
Dee?
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Kathy?
Yes.
Juan?
Yes.
Oh, there you are, Juan. Thank you, Juan. Jess?
Yes.
Right, Stephanie?
Yes.
Hey, there you are. Ruth in absentia, so no Ruth. Russell?
Yes.
Anna resigned, as you can see there as of last meeting, and Trisha.
Yes.
Right, excellent.
So, and I think
Unanimous.
I get the vote too, right?
Oh, you do get to vote. I'm so
And
sorry.
I want to be in the thing, yes.
So sorry, Kim. All right. Thank you, Tara. You have been elected. I think that also requires. Tara is a really excellent vice president. Couldn't really ask for a better vice president.
And a great curriculum chair.
Great curriculum
Go read
chair.
my 32-page CAC report.
That's right. 2 pages attached, as in not forthcoming, attached. Yeah, all right, excellent. Okay, so that now brings us to 8, my favorite category, discussion and possible action. Which is name change for academic dismissal.
So the proposal sheet, I don't, is it in there? to
It,
pull
sh-
up?
it should be in there. In board docs.
Well, there's the original PowerPoint, is it on that?
So no, this is the
There's a
kind of-
PDF attached.
Thank
Yeah, it
you. It didn't make it in, and I'll.
No, it's there. All right, and it is 8.01.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, so,
You made it bigger. Is this
Oh,
the screen shared?
and,
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, as a state, I'm Cosima Stelmeister, and I believe everyone was here last time, but I am an academic counselor, and I am back to talk about one last piece that, we decided we wanted to also have, modified and changed, just a very brief, so I can get out of here and you guys can move on. Academic probation as it stands in Title V changes were voted on last time, so the name should be changed to academic notice, along with additional very detailed changes I will use or talk about today. But one of the areas again was around the name dismissal, and to go back and do some research and gather ideas around that. So some names that were come up with through a collective meeting of ESD faculty. And then brought to ASG students, and then I did attempt a Google Doc to students that were on dismissal that had petitioned. And so the top names were the following, which required academic pause came back as the one that one with a landslide, so to speak. So those were the other two names: required academic relief, required academic break, and there were other ones, but not worth mentioning due to time and the fact that they were really didn't closely flash. So required academic pause. So you have thoughts and questions.
Yeah, I think this is great. I was just looking at the resolution, the state senate passed a resolution recommending that the chancellor's office change the language. But I didn't go to the session. Did you go to the session? I was wondering if they had some recommended language and if we were in alignment.
We're in alignment. I mean, nobody has agreed upon. They're very similar to our options. And I think if students like pause, that sounds good to
Right.
me.
I was just wondering, we don't want to have to go back and
No,
make
there's
a
no-
lot of changes if there was something definitely that they.
No, the discussion was more about needing to decriminalize
Right.
our language.
Right. So maybe we could just be the leader and tell them what to do.
I like that idea. Why not?
Wouldn't that be a change?
Ellen?
I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and accept this suggested language.
All right. Seconded by Joy, moved by Ellen. Any discussion?
Quick question, how many students you say like were surveyed, like 200? I don't remember the number of students on dismissal, but it was over, I want to say it was over 146. I'm not gonna say a lot responded, but an attempt was made. And again, email, which is one of the reasons why the other thing that I mentioned, why having certified letters sent in addition to email to reach students, being on it. Anyway,
yada on that one. But, yeah, it's difficult to get, students to respond to. But at least they were informed.
It's about 100 responses that you got.
I did not get a response. I received very few responses, but an intent to remain.
Stephanie, do you have any thoughts about that or any thoughts of language alternatives or?
Well, because, as you mentioned, right, our students eliminate us really on what it catches, and so if we're making a policy in favor of, and from the student perspective, it'd be great, to get their input and this try. So I was just wondering, like, how much student voice had input on it, but it sounds like, from my perspective, your cause release rate have similar connotation, so I'm not sure that it's necessarily needed with some similarity of the language being voted on, so I'd be willing to vote on it. I was just curious as
Yeah. In addition to that, because I see so many students that are on academic probation, I was very quick to ask them, oh, here, take a look at this. And so there were varying comments, surprisingly, some students that they liked dismissal, some students that they actually liked probation. So I was, interesting.
Yeah.
But these definitely came back as very positive in terms of all three of them, not that necessarily they voted on one over another, but the idea to change it to have something new that reflected a less of a punitive and had less of a negative connotation.
Just since I'll take the 2 minutes to say, in honor of our poet winner and English people for connotation, pause implies resume. Right? Whereas release, they're let go, break, yeah, you take a break, but you always come back and things get broken. So pause is a really lovely word. So I'm glad that was the winner from that perspective.
Just one last thing, so for probation, none of those apply.
So just as a reminder, we're doing academic notice was the one.
Okay.
We're already on
I know it's so easy, you're not, this is very complicated. So that's what we have for academic.
Okay,
notice.
good, sorry, I forgot.
That's totally fine, yeah.
So which one are you gonna,
So required academic pause
is the first,
is the top one.
okay,
by-
And that's the one we have the
by-
motion.
Yeah.
academic release has many problems with it,
It has-
but it also reminds me of a fish. And then, great, I mean, if
Great,
you're
great
a
sounds like
college student,
Vacation.
if you're a college student, that's traumatized in relationship.
We had intermission, we had respite, we had one semester on
Yes,
break.
right, that's
Yeah,
true.
we had scholars, so there were a lot of wonderful, and I was so grateful for the, people brainstorming and the things I researched to see, so here we are.
Right, so we have a motion on the floor. Everyone ready to vote? Right,
On pause.
on pause, yeah, on accepting required academic pause. Yes. Would you like roll call? What makes you guys happy today?
We can just raise it.
Okay, we're just gonna, I like that. We'll raise our hands. All in favor? Thanks. Margarita, 1, 2, 3.
Get that in there.
All right. And Trisha has a hand and one has his hand up there. All right, perfect, thank you. And all opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Melanie, can I just say one thing?
Yes, please.
I just want to thank Kasima for all her hard work. She's been doing this for almost 2 years. So this has been such a great, for our students especially, but I do want to thank you for the diligence that you've worked on this for the past 2 years. So thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
I think it's exciting and nice when we get to do these things that really can make it, and when we get to see it in fruition, it's gonna make a change and a difference for students, so.
How quickly will it be?
Well,
You got it here, right? You got it.
Have anything you'd like to add or say in terms of length of time, but I do believe, rolling out many changes takes time in terms of.
Yeah, no, I can speak. I'm just really thrilled. I think this is awesome to be adapting this best practice to being more student centered and supportive. I think there's so much stigma around being on any kind of academic notice in the language was doing it disservice and causing even more stress. So we'll be looking at implementing new we have to redo our process with the language. And eventually, we will be looking at piloting some of the best practices. We'll keep you updated, but the first piece is to implement the name change, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. Great way to end your semester.
Yes, that's great. Enjoy the rest of your semester.
Rest of your semester, a short period of time now, right? A very, very packed short period of time. All right, so this brings us to 8.02, which is our resolution on academic freedom. And Margarita, can you bring that up and share the screen, please? It's 8.02. Thank you. And a huge shout out to our academic policies committee, especially Ellen and especially Tara for working on this, to Ellen O'Connor for shepherding this through. I got to go to a meeting with someone from a school that we thought was going to be sort of cutting edge that we could look at and examine. And what was really fascinating was the more that person talked, the more we saw that this was exactly not the kind of policy we wanted. It was so interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. It was sort of a moment where the speaker kept speaking and people just, were like, oh my gosh. Yeah,
Pretty horrifying.
Katie, you were there. Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty horrifying. And it just went oh so wrong. But it was really, I think, in some ways more useful for us to see how they had understood it, how they shaped it for themselves, and how different our process is. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Not that you need to care, but I've been thinking that who makes something, how it comes about, goes to sort of the DNA of an idea. And that the really cool thing about our academic freedom policy is that it really does keep coming back to the core DEIAA issues that are, enshrined in some of our documents, but I think that we're trying to actually live through. And so this is a pretty exciting thing. And so, to Chris Johnson, who snorted, I think it was a snort. Yeah, when I said,
Call out.
way back in the day when I said, yes, we can actually pass an AP, and I had my impossible timeline. You remember this?
Oh, I do remember.
Yeah.
I think it was more mature. That's
Yeah, it was delusional. I kind of knew it was delusional. So with all of that, thank you, Margarita, for getting that up. Here is our,
Can you make it bigger?
yeah.
I'll just
Yeah,
add too,
please.
that one of the reasons why I really have advocated for creating a resolution is so that, one, we're documenting our processes. Two, we are.
Sorry, Lon, trying to help her make it bigger.
So we're documenting why we're doing it. All of those conversations that we had here at Senate, the conversations that you brought back to your divisions, the conversations that are happening statewide, the conversations that are happening nationwide. And acknowledging that there is no real clear definition of what academic freedom is, as well as what it isn't. We do have a VP on academic freedom, but it conflates free speech and academic freedom, and these are two overlapping concepts, but they are distinct. And so what we wanted to do was to create a resolution that is capturing why we're doing the work, and as well what we are committed to completing next year. And part of that is completing what will be an AP, but also it's a commitment to ensuring that for our college, academic freedom is squarely within a DEIA lens. It is not a kind of reactionary, someone's gonna tell me what to do with my curriculum, I can't, include Beethoven in my class anymore, or something kind of ridiculous like that. As well as our commitment to ensuring that the same rights and guarantees that full-time instructors have and ESD folks have is also awarded to our part-time and adjunct faculty as well. We have some protections in our contracts and they do not. And so that's also becoming clear. And then our last commitment here is to likewise ensure that our college is committed to offering professional development around all of these areas. And I know part of that will be taken up by the new committee, TLC committee. But that's just one area. So that is what this resolution is documenting. It's here really again to document why we're doing it, to document where we're at right now as we end this semester and what we're committed to doing next year. Finishing, because no, we did not finish. We did, and they did not.
Thank you for that, Tara. All right, how would you guys like to proceed with this?
Move to approve, move to adopt.
Move to approve, seconded, and we can open it up for discussion.
I'll second.
Oh, thank you. With a smile, not a snort. Yeah. Short. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. And now it's open for discussion. Ellen.
Okay, this is something that I said at the AP committee and I thought I would say it here. I actually initially I thought that the time for a resolution like this was not now, but after we have draft language for an AP. And I think part of that was as we were grappling with it on the academic policies committee. At the beginning, it felt like some of our work was reactive to some of the current challenges to academic freedom now. And I think we need to separate the concept of academic freedom from the current political climate, because it's really not at its foundation about that. However, I do think it's also appropriate for us as the faculty leadership body to acknowledge the times we live in and the climate we live in. And so I did think it might have even been something I suggested in the first place that the Senate adopt a resolution. But I was thinking of that as happening more after AP drafts some language, and the Senate could, in approving that language, also have a resolution that speaks to the importance of it. Especially now. Through more discussions we've had at AP, my thinking has morphed on that a little, and I can see some value to doing it in advance of that as well. But having said that, I have some particular concerns about this, just a few items in this resolution. And I don't want, and I'll point out what they are, but I'm part of the nature of my concern is that some of the things will end up over influencing what ends up getting drafted or how it ends up getting implemented. So I'll just say what they are. So one is let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth whereas down, where it says, I guess it's the one sentence, but at the last couple lines where it says transparency to our activities to assess clearly on our own performance and to be accountable to each other and to our students and to the citizens who fund our college. I am really concerned about that phrase, to the citizens who fund our college, because a core principle of academic freedom in particular is that it comes out of the expertise and the scholarship of experts. And so I think that like saying this is basically like signaling, hey, you want to ban talks of race in our classrooms like they're doing in Florida? We're accountable to you. We're not, we, in many ways, the institution is accountable to the citizens who fund the college, but not when it comes to academics. We're accountable to our disciplines and the standards of our disciplines. So that's one thing I have a really, that's probably the strongest.
If
concern I
it's a
have.
different one, could we
Yeah, no,
briefly comment as we
Yeah,
go?
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to stay on that one right now.
Okay,
So
sure.
while we're there, let's just stay there. Thank you for that, Ellen.
I just want to remind me of the Second Amendment as far as what's modifying what, as far as the right to bear arms. It's like not all the time. It's like a militia, but anyway. So I read this is just that we will be sharing our processes. Not that these people are invited to weigh in on them, but that, like, for instance, the CAC guidelines for our cores and that kind of thing, that and what our definitions are. So that is how I read it. But I understand that concern that it looks like an invitation, but as I read that, how it's written, and I don't know who originally drafted this particular one, or was it on the AP committee that all this was working? So what I read it is because of the value of academic freedom, will bring clarity and transparency to our activities to assess our own performance, and so people know we're doing this. That makes us accountable to all of us, that we are clear about what these things are and how we assess that we're following them. But I don't know if people feel that if they read it that way, if they read it more of the concern that Ellen raised.
That was the intention, but the fact that you interpret it that way makes me just want to strike that part out.
Yeah.
I'm not, I mean, I see both interpretations. I was more.
I'm happy to strike that part out.
The possibility of it being interpreted that way, and the fact that the public in this instance has nothing to do with academic freedom.
I can.
And the idea that the public does is at the root of some of the challenges to it in the first place that are happening. Okay.
So one question then is, if we take that out, then what we have is that sort of, going back to that AAUP 1940 definition, right? Of the relationship between faculty and students, and that's what it would enshrine. Right. So, right, if we drop out into the citizens, accountable to each other and to our students. So, any other thoughts about this one?
I'm a
Joy?
little concerned on this one, if we were to strike that. This could be read as obfuscation as opposed to bringing clarity. For folks. I mean, I read it as, I think the same with Kim did. I do appreciate those concerns.
How do you see it as obfuscation?
Well, if we leave them out, I mean, the way this is written, it says we're trying to bring, at least as I read it, we're trying to bring clarity and transparency to all these folks that follow. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that there needs to be greater clarity around what academic freedom is, especially to the citizens who don't understand this issue.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Kathy.
I agree with Chris, but I would like it to stop. I don't think who fund our college
Yeah, exactly.
means anything. I mean, I think we have a lot of citizens here.
Yeah.
That we want to be clear and transparent with who maybe don't fund our college. So I think that's a little weird. So I would be more comfortable, to our citizens, just leave it to our citizens. Because I do agree that there should be some kind of transparency. We don't have to agree with them, but at least we should be explaining to them.
We would, there's like, as an idea, and to each other, to our students and to the public.
That still raises this question, right? So now what we've got a few things on the board, and there's something that's kind of bothering me about it, but I'm gonna think for a little while about it. But so one of our questions here is the last part, right? So changing to citizens who fund our college, I see Kathy's point about the sort of economic imperative in there,
Yeah.
right? If you have money, you get a say.
Yeah.
Then there's also Ellen's point about a kind of uninformed accountability, right? Joy, you had your hand up.
No, if it applies, but, I guess this is a little bit of a negative thing, but dual enrollment, you know, then we can have high school students in our class and we don't want, parents of minors weighing in on our curriculum. Is that already covered? They were final waivers or is there?
Yeah.
Great question. Did that come up at all in the? No.
Tricia has her hand raised.
Oh, Tricia, sorry, thank you. Tricia, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I was in line. Yeah, so I was taking what everyone was saying and I'm thinking, like, do we have to say to whom necessarily? Can we just say to, because again, the bottom line is transparency and accountability to, you know, like Ellen brought up about, or Kim, about to our disciplines. So do we have to say that to each other, to the students and to the citizens, or can we just say to clearly assess transparency and to be and to be accountable, period? Do we have to say to whom? If it's kind of clear, just in general, we're accountable and transparent.
Yeah, I see the cleverness of that. I'm imagining that in a few years' time, we might be arguing about, well, what do we mean about that? To whom? So there's a few hands. Russell?
Yes, so I'm agreeing with pretty much everyone that, I think we gotta identify who we're accountable to. For me, it just seems to be our constituents, our constituent body. So if you're teaching econ, it's gonna be your econ class, in my opinion. And so, right, I think it would be very, very clear, it would dictate. What bothered me about COVID and mask mandates and vaccine mandates is within this body, we were listening to people who were not our constituents. You know, they were from Milan, Ventura, they were everybody who was, you know, they beat the drum or occupying our time, they were not stakeholders within this cause. They were not employees, they were not students. And that part of it, right? And we gave voice to people who had an agenda that had nothing to do with us doing what's right for students. So for me, constituents, constituency body, you know, our stakeholders. Yes, that's where I would go.
I like the idea of, like, if this whereas is really about bringing clarity and transparency to, like, the activities of teaching and learning, then I would just say that and not talk about who we're accountable to. If this whereas is intended to be more about to whom we're accountable, then I think that accountability as it applies to academic freedom is accountable to the standards of our discipline, not to anyone else. And I mean, I could also have a critique about the power structures in our disciplines and like needing to challenge and push back on those structures as well, but I think that gets beyond the point. But I think ultimately when it comes to academic freedom, yeah.
So I wonder if part of what because what you're coming back to is the core of that 1940 definition, right? That's still, we still use it because it's still so useful. I wonder if we put that in here somewhere that would help cover that relationship that you're talking about, Ellen. And if we put that in, how that may or may not modify the one we're talking about. So we still need to stay on that, but I'm just sort of saying that I hear a lot of us coming back to that sort of central tenet.
I think two things. Number one, the important thing really for us today, I believe, is to approve the resolves. Because the resolves are going to guide the AP committee to their job. I'm not sure how much anybody's going to pay attention to the whereases. And I think we could actually take out the word accountable, because I think that gets us into trouble. And we could just, we want to be transparent to our stakeholders, which are all of us. And it just means we want to be transparent. We want them to know what our policies are. And accountability gets us into a lot of trouble. So I think taking accountability out and taking that citizens to fund out and to our stakeholders and remember to focus on the resolves. Because that's really what we're taking action on, is what we want the AP committee to do.
How would, so
I just have a
Yeah.
word before, we went. I think we should just delete the whole thing,
the whole,
that word.
that whole whereas,
Just boom. I mean, the results are most important. It's clear that in doing all of this, and something doesn't exist, we're going to be transparent. To me, that's the cleanest. But
right, so let's set that aside. We've got that before we move to the results, a good suggestion from Kathy, and I just saw our dean arrive post dental emergency. Okay, all right, we'll see what we can do about fitting you back in, but we'll keep going forward. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at those resolves.
well, we want to hear Ellen's other comments. Maybe that was just the one we could look at that.
Yeah, can I remember the other?
Now that one we've talked through, modifying,
Yeah.
delete, so we'll figure that out, but if there's one, is that okay before we?
Feel free to go on, and when I find them again, I'll raise my hand again.
All right. Right.
I should have made a note.
You said that.
Oh, no, back on that
Yeah,
thing.
no,
document.
It was.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Just scroll down to the resolve. Wait a second. Thank you.
Oh,
Perfect.
I remembered.
There's three, okay. Scroll up a little bit more, Marguerite. Yeah, that one's the first result.
I think
Thank you.
there's one that I'm still overlooking that I think was more minor, but the final result, I had some concerns about the idea that the academic senate collaborates with the college's administration and board of trustees to extend the same rights and protections to academic, I would say of academic freedom, but to part-time faculty as those bestowed to full-time faculty. So I guess one question I have is, why would that be in question if it were faculty have academic freedom or was in the policy? So, and the other is certainly working with the administration to obviously an AP is gonna not just be up to the Senate. So like, I understand that, but I don't understand the Board of Trustees part, because APs are not there.
No, but
Domain.
the idea was because it's supposed to be in sync with the BP, and the concern that has been raised is that it's stated in our contract that, say, for example, like a parent or somebody sues us, like the college is going to protect us, but part-time and full-time don't have that guarantee. So I think that's the intention of this result.
Stated in our FA contract,
Yeah,
so that applies to part-time faculty as well as full-time then. Right,
it's my understanding that it doesn't,
okay.
and that was the concern.
We're all looking at you, girl.
Yeah.
Okay, can you rephrase your question? What exactly you're looking for?
Yeah, so a number of colleges, and then when the AP committee did look at our contract, we're guaranteed academic freedom, full-time faculty are guaranteed full-time faculty are guaranteed it. And that means the college will support us if somebody accuses us of whatever, right? There's a concern that that is not clearly articulated for part-time faculty anywhere.
I would have to look that up.
I can't believe that. I can't believe it would protect all that.
And our policy, we believe that it is also not assured in the policy that we have at the moment. Does that policy only apply to full-time faculty?
That was what some of the folks on AP had done research on. I didn't do that part of the research, I couldn't speak to it, so I.
I don't see that phrase.
I don't even remember academic.
I did not see that, because if it's not applying to part-time faculty, it's
So-
also like take out all of the non-private faculty.
Yeah,
Right, so that was not my understanding when I reviewed this policy, but I'd be happy to take it at the same.
Thank you, thank you.
the term academic freedom doesn't appear in the FA contract at all.
No, it doesn't. Because it's in policy at this college.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I mean, there may be other protections that relate, but I just, regardless of the, you know, the interpretation or language of the FA contract, I'm just concerned about the inclusion of I'm just concerned about that resolve in general for a variety of reasons.
Take it out. Go to resolve.
Well, wait,
Right, yeah.
doesn't technically the
Resolve.
board approve our, how do our contracts move through, an individual faculty member's contract? What's the process that moves through? Then,
The individual contract.
yeah, I'm just trying
Work
to,
contract, working agreement.
yeah, no, I'm saying each year we get a contract, right? If you're
The
full
pay
time.
contract. For the contract of each individual faculty.
That's, I'm talking the employee contract, each individual faculty member.
Employee contract. I think the vice president, human resources, she would know that process much better than I.
Or with the,
The individual contract. If I can have the original question.
yeah,
I get it right.
I'm just trying to remember the signatures on our contract that we get each year. Because what the question here is it unnecessary is, I think, right, is Board of Trustees being added unnecessarily? Or is the Board of Trustees actually involved in any way in our individual contracts?
Well, the board of trustees approved all of our hires.
Okay. And is that reapproved every year?
So your contracts are signed by you for the upcoming one, your tenure is there, and after that, once you tenure, and then your name doesn't go to the board again. So on the individual one that you see.
There you go. Okay, so Jess and then Ellen,
Oh, another.
but you haven't said anything yet.
Oh, I was just gonna ask what that's irrelevant because it's an AP. And the AP would include the public safety, basically. I don't-
That was
That makes
basically
sense.
I think, tell me if this is the
You
point
could
you're
probably phrase
making.
it better.
Well, tell me if this is the point you're making, or if I'm just projecting my point onto you. I like, if we don't have anything about academic freedom in the union contract, a contract which applies to both part-time and full-time faculty and has to do with working conditions. This academic freedom, I think it is a matter of 10+1, so Senate purview. Some colleges have put it in their union contract, which I don't think is a bad idea to reinforce the protection. But given that that's not the path we're taking right now, we're talking about an academic policy Senate subcommittee working on it. With the idea of drafting an AP for it, then it has nothing to do with our contracts. It has to, you know, it has to, so if there were a problem, it would go through a different remediation or like a different process of addressing it than it would if it were a contract, you know, a contract violation or the union needing to you know, file a grievance in order to get the college to support someone who's been, you know, fired because a parent of a 16-year-old in their class didn't like the terms they used, whatever. You know, so like that's one approach we could take, but that's not the path that we're on. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Kathy, and then we're gonna start to make some decisions.
So we have a BP 4030 on academic freedom. And it just refers to faculty. It does not delineate full-time, part-time, or anything. So I would assume that the college, and we have no AP on academic freedom. So I mean, in this policy, it doesn't say full-time faculty only.
But I think that's what we're hoping to clarify in the AP, right? The BP is the larger
Right.
one, the broader one.
But I mean, at this point, there should be no distinction between full-time and part-time faculty being protected by the college, right?
That's
Somebody?
what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah. So this result just came out of a concern for our part-time faculty and we can subtract it, can do what we like with it.
So maybe it's more, sorry. I don't
Go
know.
for it, Jeff.
So maybe it's more, or like, related to safety and like being terminated in general. So not even related to this specifically. So, like, I know they have hiring rates already, but maybe they wanted to make it stronger, because I don't know the details of that, but it was like some part-time faculty have been fired because of academic freedom, I guess, and,
Or because of lack of academic freedom.
or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess if you, I don't know how to phrase it, but is there anything in here in their contract that requires like a reason? Like if you could just be terminated for no reason or no
People can
reason
still
to
claim
explain.
there's a reason, it's just not about, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do, Cornelia, then Kim.
Okay, so for part-time faculty, we have the general problem that they are what the law calls them equitable employees. And there's also an ed code language that allows part-time faculty to be basically laid off without a reason and without a notice. And we can talk a long time about how problematic this is, just getting started on that. But we do have, as far as the union could do that, we have a seniority with higher preference in our contract that gives the part-time faculty some type of protection in a way that senior part-time faculty has a right to an assignment if the assignments are available. Once they have reached that seniority over the course in that's usually within 4 semesters. For part-time faculty who do not have this protection yet, then yeah, they could be terminated without a reason provided. If a part-time faculty member is terminated and has reason to assume that this was done, for example, because of retaliation, because they said something that was challenged by in the classroom, and they felt their academic freedom was violated, then they definitely could come to the union, and the union would kind of support them, even if the academic freedom is not outlined in the contract. The protection and the support in case of termination that could have been a retaliatory move would be still be done by their.
Okay, hold on. Because I think what we got, this is it. This is the last day, you know, we are not going forward until we see each other in the summer, right? So,
I have a recommendation.
please.
My recommendation would be for me to take this feedback, rework it and present it in our summer meeting.
Perfect.
I just want to jump in on the last. Well, for the feedback, the resolve part, I think that calling out at part-time is really significant because of the power differential. So if you were to change extend to ensure. It's not like they're not there,
Right.
but it's trickier. And so I think then you're saying, hey, look, we got your back. So that would be.
Yeah, it's a clever, yeah. Okay, excellent. All right. Do we all feel good about that? So what's going to happen to this is this will come back, it'll be reworked by AP. And thank you, Tara, or Tara, right? So thank you for that. But you know, well done, seriously, well done us, because it's a really complicated conversation. And we've been talking about it for months. And we at least have something where we know enough to be able to have a discussion.
Just a point of order, because I don't know how this works, since we actually had a motion on the table,
Right.
we're not voting on it.
Right.
Do we have to do some like Robert's rules magic?
Yeah.
to move on?
Let it die, but
Yeah. I think we
We could table it.
You take away.
Okay, Who made the motion?
I think I made the motion, so I. Yeah.
All right.
I was hoping-
But yeah, you remove your motion. Okay, so that brings us to. Unless I've missed a page here, which, seems to be happening today. Page 11, out of 13, we're close. Discussion item, and that's 9.01, update on respondus and.
No, you
proctoria.
did say go through. Sorry, that's me.
Did
It's
I?
2 seconds. It's the
Oh,
bylaw.
sorry,
Yeah, no,
bylaws
okay,
update. Sorry, John.
2 seconds, but basically.
Okay, make you wait.
Yeah, you can get going. This is gonna be 2 seconds. So, as usual, we like to review our bylaws every year. And so now that we have the new committee, we're kind of waiting, that's done. So we want to update the bylaws. I will be leaving, but in my past, present through the summer thing, I'm happy to help with those because I've been taking notes all along, but we need somebody who's going to chair it. So it can't be me. For summer senate, they'll bring back some stuff, and then for fall, early in fall, they'll be approved. Bylaws are just approved by 2/3 vote of the Senate. So we need somebody else to chair it, and ideally one other person to look over the Google, to look over the suggestion. We can even do it asynchronously, although sometimes for wording, I always like them. Talk it out with people live, so.
And we're talking really simple stuff like
Yeah, it's just
EVP
correct.
to VP, right? There's just some basic mistakes.
Then there's,
Now.
there are a couple other, more confusing, anyway, so I just need somebody to be in charge of it. Who's on the Senate going forward.
Who would like to do that?
I will be doing the first draft edits, so it's really more just with formality in some ways, but.
I'll do it. I have to work for CAC anyway. I'm here.
If you're sure, okay.
Any of the new senators to be, because we're talking about the summer? Not to put you
It's
down.
gonna be a glance. at
And
Google.
truly a-
It's very.
All right, Danielle's signing up for very little work. Get in there.
We promise.
Get in there. We're feeling good about that. Okay. awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did skip over that. I'm sure I won't skip over it during, oh wait, Trisha.
No, I'd like to help out too if needed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Trisha. All right. Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for having me here once again. Just trying to close the loop on a conversation that's been going on for over a year with COI. Just want to preface this by saying that this has been done in consultation with our new dean, that Taylor Shopper just said. The FRC and COI's recommendations regarding respondents versus proctoria. I'm also going to preface this by saying this is a conversation that I've inherited from our former co-chair, Kim Manda. If there are any user or technical information regarding proctorio that I can't answer, I will defer to the COI members who are here, or I'm happy to bring those questions back to COI because I don't use either respondents or proctorio. That said, Rob also wanted me to make clear when it comes to a decision about whether to go with respondents or proctorio, that the FRC is not in the business of taking any tools away from faculty. But what they do try to do is to make solid recommendations on behalf of faculty and of students as well. And this is a follow-up to another meeting of the Senate that Rob had presented out on February 17th. I'm just going to go ahead and cut to the chase here, folks. The recommendation on the part of COI is to go with respondents. And that decision is coming nigh because of the fact that the current subscription to proctorio ends in the summer. So the decision has to be made on this one, folks. We do have some provisional recommendations as well to be able to offer you for consideration here. There are a slew of challenges that have come up with proctorio. There are at least 5 major areas with which COI has weighed in and investigated as best as they could. They tried to get some information from their divisions respectively to be able to gather data on proctorio usage. That is not COI's charge, but they did try. The fact that they had to go out of their way to be able to find as much information as they could is probably a good indicator as to why it is that proctorio really isn't working well for the faculty. So those 5 areas include ease of use, that is very closely related to the technical limitations on proctorio, student privacy issues, which interestingly enough has some consequences for cost, and also where the faculty are in terms of using either respondents versus proctorio. We did have some who had expressed vehemently that they keep Proctorio. There may be a way to be able to hold on to that, but only provisionally so, because of financial limitations on this one. So I have my alarm set for 10 minutes, folks, so I'm trying to be as expedient as possible. Sure. All right, so in terms of ease of use, Proctorio is a nightmare. When it comes to Proctorio, one of the challenges is that it is tethered to two particular browsers only, Chrome and Microsoft Edge. That creates some challenges because of the fact that not all students actually use Chrome or use Microsoft Edge. Whenever there are calls to IT support, frantic calls on the day of an exam or in an exam in progress, the calls are usually about getting access codes to be able to use Proctorio. And that usually is a good indicator that they are not using Chrome or Microsoft Edge. The other challenges with Proctorio include that it is not device friendly. It is compatible with PCs, it is compatible with Macs, it is not compatible with iPads. And I could probably say a number of other tablet devices are also not compatible with it as well. That's an equity issue for students. Whereas Respondus does use, it is accessible using multiple browsers. It is also an extension piece of software that you can use as well. The FRC is happy to work with faculty in making the transition from Proctorio to Respondus. In terms of technical limitations, Proctorio requires a lot of bandwidth. And the reason why is because it is actually recording two things. One, it's recording your face and your surroundings, and it's also recording what is happening on screen as well. The greater the bandwidth, the greater the likelihood is that the program is going to crash. That means students have to get back in if they haven't already had to deal with some of the login issues as well. On top of that, when it comes to Chrome, for any of you who have used Chrome and ever wondered, where did that button go? Google has a way of updating Chrome on a regular basis with brand new features and never really telling you where that old button was. Or they rename it, so it's a lot harder to be able to use. Plus, on top of that, unfortunately, when it comes to Proctorio, it has access to browser data. That is a very serious concern for student privacy issues. And on top of that, we have no idea how many people are actually using Proctorio, not on the student side, not on the faculty side, from an IT support perspective and from a research perspective for campus. That's just not good. If we had to actually go out to our divisions to be able to hunt down that information, then that just says that the picture on how many people are actually using this is incomplete. Whereas when it comes to Respondus, it does not need as much of the bandwidth as possible because it does record your face and your surroundings, but not necessarily your screen. Respondus does have an answer that I will get to about why it is that recording student screens may not be necessary in this case. Respondus also has a dashboard that allows you to access the user data that we need as well. So for IT support, and also for anything like IR, for example, if there are concerns as to whether or not classes that actually use online proctoring, if that's a problem for students, which it can be, because we do have students who have left courses because they dealt with a lot of frustrations with Proctorio, then we need to know that too. In terms of student privacy issues, because of the fact that Proctorio works with Chrome and with Microsoft Edge only and has access to student browser information, the System-Wide Technology Access Collaborative, which is an arm of the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Governors, has decided to stop endorsing access to Proctorio. That has some implications for cost as well, because of the fact that if your users are using it, if your campuses are using it, then the likelihood is that they will have to raise prices. They're not going to come down from it. They will likely go in a different direction if they lose users on this one. Again, on student privacy issues, Respondus only records the student's face and surroundings, although there are some who would still have some pedagogical concerns about any invasion of students' private spaces. And again, students have stopped going to classes that have utilized Proctorio as well. With regard to security issues on looking at students' browsers and their windows. I understand a lot of the concerns around AI and ChatGPT and students navigating a way to be able to use an AI. I have more than a few things to be able to say on that one. But here's what respondents have said. To the questions about recording the screen, lockdown browser prevents students from accessing other applications, including AIs and ChatGPT, or resources on their computer during an assessment. That means recording the desktop for integrity purposes is redundant and unnecessary. So the increased bandwidth, along with the worries about all of this crashing on students during an exam, just says Proctorio is just not really doing the job that we need it to do. On a matter of cost, pretty clear here, respondents cost less. If we're talking about Proctorio, then the cost is $35,000 to $40,000 per year. And again, that price is likely not to go down. And when it comes to respondents, $10,000 to start and upwards of about $25,000 in subsequent years. If you wanted to go on just fiscal stability alone, fiscal responsibility, then the recommendation is to go with the respondents. That's not to say that there aren't some debates among the faculty about whether or not to go with respondents versus Proctorio. What Rob has conveyed is that in conversation with a number of faculty that for those that have actually used Proctorio and then used respondents, they eventually said, go with respondents. But there are those who said, because of some of the extra features that come with Proctorio that they want to be able to maintain them. So we tried to offer as balanced a view as possible in terms of what quotes are represented here. One faculty member in favor of Proctorio says, I have been very satisfied with Proctorio, both its functionality and customer support. Each semester, there are very few cases or students who experience significant technical issues. Overall, a very small percentage of the total. I have contacted Proctorio support for a few times with questions and have been able to contact with support staff right away. Another expresses the very concerns about AI and ChatGPT. That when it comes to the standard essay, that there are challenges with students resorting to the use of the AI to be able to use it as an essay mirror. The AIs themselves are not just limited to written responses. There are emerging AIs that are a concern for our STEM faculty because they are plugged in directly to mobile devices. You can take a picture of a math problem, for example, it will try to solve it for you. I can go ahead and tell you they are not very good, but they are getting better. So I don't want to dismiss any of the concerns of faculty who use Proctorio, STEM faculty in particular, who have been contending with lots of issues with the digital environments already. But whether or not Proctorio is the solution to this, and whether or not we need the extra feature that says, let's record what's on their browser, I have some skepticism about. There are others who also say that the screen recording is valuable because if there are some questionable use, if there are some students whose activities online are questionable, then maybe the recordings can help to be able to backtrack and to be able to see if students are actually being academically dishonest. But this individual actually says, oh, that advantage is actually nullified because of the fact that, well, have you ever actually sat down with all of these recordings and gone through all of them inch by inch by inch? If that's the case, then if you have a reasonably sized class, even with a cap of only 20 students, that is a lot of recording time to look for just to be able to see whether or not students under lock key and surveillance are actually doing something wrong. And then there are the challenges with what Proctorio cannot actually do. Like, for example, verifying students' identities. If students are actually holding their thumb over their ID on the camera, then it's like, well, Proctorio does not stop them. And then there are the privacy concerns as well. As I had mentioned, there are students who have left courses because they have been frustrated with Proctorio or have even said, you haven't satisfied what questions I have about privacy, and so therefore I'm going to go elsewhere. And where they go, I don't know. Another one, I had to abandon using Proctorio because it was nothing but a constant headache with issues with students getting kicked out and needing to be added back in. And given an extra 10 students without working cameras, poor connections, computers that couldn't handle it, and freezing, etc., I think the issues were definitely exacerbated by the requirement to upload written work, and grading process and work is a requirement of all of our courses. I am not using any proctoring currently, and am looking forward to the in-person testing requirements again. Another one, speaking to and highlighted here, some of the frantic emails and phone calls that we are receiving over the use of Proctorio. I have to cut to the chase here. All right. Other than that, my colleagues and I are okay with switching to Respondus if it, as it seems, IT, FRC, and COI have established that Respondus is more cost-effective and user-friendly than Proctorio. So our final recommendation, some things for you to consider in future discussion and any action items as well. Once again, I will reiterate on the FRC's behalf, the FRC is not in the business of taking away tools, but they want to give faculty and students better choices as well. So from an IT perspective, the lack of user data from Proctorio is a very serious problem. That said, in conversation with Jens and also with Ruth, BRAC has set aside funding to be able to cover both Respondus and Proctorio, but that's only in the short term. As with anything ever funded on campus, it's always what's available right now and what can we plan for the future. So here are some recommendations. Both tools can be supported while funding is available, but this is not a permanent solution. And the reason why is because if you're considering the life of a student on campus and the classes that do require proctoring, you are talking about multiple platforms that they have to contend with. Are we grading them on their ability to navigate the tools that we are required to use, or are we grading them on their knowledge for the course? COI recommends one platform, Respondus. And also there are other extensions to Canvas that are under consideration. Like, for example, Gradescope was recently brought to us. In short, it is an AI-powered engine that is already being used at UCSD. It can help with a lot of faculty's workload. If we're thinking about anybody that does any equation work, multiple versions of an exam, Gradescope is a tool that can grade in parallel and also help with norming of the exams as well. If you want to talk about that another time, well, it's something that people in COI wanted me to sneak in here. But that also says, hey, if we can go with a lower cost Respondus, then that frees up some money. I'm not going to make decisions on anybody's behalf, but that might free up some money to be able to bring in other tools like Gradescope. The other option, as much as the features of Proctorio are lauded by some faculty, they're not all being used. And so if it is possible, if we can give faculty an opportunity to be able to draw down from Proctorio, let's give them a window to be able to do so, negotiate down the cost with the vendor if that's possible. But failing that, go with Respondus is the recommendation. Continue to look into on-campus proctoring. There is a lot of discussion, particularly among anybody STEM, to be able to bring back some dedicated space for proctoring for exams. The other ChatGPT AI is a concern for many of these faculty. We are all new to dealing with emerging AIs. And so therefore I want to just express those faculties that have. This is going to be a hard transition for a lot of faculty. They need to be supported, but there is a transition to be made when it comes to dealing with ChatGPT. Keeping students under lock, key, and surveillance isn't going to be a permanent solution for any emerging AIs. This is not going away. Our students deserve an education where they're preparing not only for their future classes, where they're going to be in an AI augmented environment, but also their future jobs as well. AI is evolving very quickly. We have a responsibility to teach them about this and also help support faculty as well as they make the transition. This is not going to be easy, but that's why we're also advocating for faculty professional development as well, to expand on how to teach with or alongside emerging AIs. And for future consideration to close out. This is a resolution that was passed by the Student Senate of the California Community College System. They have come to a resolution and a recommendation for the legislature to eventually abolish online proctoring.
Good luck.
On top of that, in a survey of over 317 faculty, in terms of usage of Proctorio, it falls at 17% usage as opposed to Respondus, which is at about 63 to 65% as well. So
That's a statewide statistic.
that is a statewide statistic for those that did bother to actually do the survey.
Right,
The
right.
challenges that we have in trying to get any kind of user data, one of the other problems with Proctorio as well. So
Sorry.
Right, question.
My first question was just a curious data nerd question, which is like, were those percentages using, you know, one or versus the other? Did they have access to both? Or was it like more are using Respondus because that's what's available to them?
the last.
So like not necessarily a preference,
Right.
Yes.
but okay. So, which brings me to the other thing I just wanted to say, which I don't, use, proctoring at all, other than as a student, which happened to be with Proctorio, which was both annoying and fine technically, but, and I share some of students' concerns about privacy in particular, but just speaking on behalf of other faculty who, are really attached to Proctorio, I wanted to emphasize that I've talked with faculty who have said they will not be able to do online proctoring effectively without Proctorio because of the screen capture thing. Like that's crucial to at least the way they do their exams now. And so it would require a lot of, it's more for them more than just changing from one platform to another. I can't really elaborate on that a lot because I don't use it myself, but I do think, you know, being on COI myself too, I think there's a strong pro-Respondus bias on COI. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that the faculty who are really attached to Proctorio and for whom switching to Respondus would really be problematic for them. I just want to make sure that their voices are considered as well.
I just want to say, I agree with you about that, because that was Matt's thing. But the math department is requiring in-person exams now. So it doesn't matter for anyone to just run it down.
Okay, all right. Kathy, and then I just want to remind us, we've got another agenda item.
Are we gonna take action today or not?
Well, he's looking for, as it says there, under, it's a discussion item, and so we could bring it back at another time to vote on it, but he's looking for feedback.
So I've used every proctoring system we've ever had. I used Respondent last year when we had it, loved it, never had any student issues. And I was not concerned about the video part. Proctorio, I've used it since we got it, and I used it again this year. It's a problem for students. They're texting me at all hours of the day and night. I need a code. No, you don't need a code. We've done practice quizzes. I've given them every bit of information I can. And they still don't remember. They can't do it on an iPad, which is, irritating. And maybe the solution for next year is if we could do both. And maybe some faculty that love Proctorio could try Respondents with one class and do a comparison to see how that works, because Proctorio is terrible. They have so many technical issues. That's my issue with it. Otherwise, I don't really care, but the technical problems are awful.
Okay, Karen?
My concern, and I was on COI when we tried to communicate well and figure it out. I don't know how many people are using it, and we're looking at 35 to 40,000, maybe more now that this data said this sucks and violates privacy. Cost could go up. The idea that we can't get the data on it, it just doesn't make sense to me. So sooner or later, how much money are we spending for a couple people who insist it's required for their pedagogy? I just don't know how to balance all of that, and I still don't. So I think this is such an interesting moment of majorities / resources, and I don't have an answer, but I just want to say that when I look at that, I see the answer to the privacy. I see and I see how much the students are suffering, but other people say the students are okay. I don't know, but it just seems like it's, I appreciate all the time that COI and the FRC is spending on this, but this sort of seems like one of those cases where democracy and talking through things can go in circles forever. So I'm just saying that, I don't have an answer. And I guess I think my final line is, I think we do need to know how many people are using this here. And I don't know why that is so hard to find out.
I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this in, those student privacy issues are a lawsuit waiting to happen. I think that's worth considering.
And I'll just add, like, it's not foolproof, right? Like neither of these are.
No,
foolproof.
right.
I know because we work with the math department and yeah.
That's
students-
why they're done.
That's why they're done doing it. That's why CAC is revising the addendum to address in-person proctoring for online.
And
record
HIT
courses.
requires in-person proctoring. I think I observed somebody and who said you gotta find a proctoring.
So that is another option.
Yeah.
I will say for the record, if we start having more and more required in-person assessments, exams for online courses, then we as a college need to create like a testing center.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and liaison with other areas.
I don't think DSPS is gonna pick all these up because that is not the goal of DSPS, just because they have no place for students to take tests. That is not what it's for.
For the library, we've gotten
Yeah.
lots of requests
Yeah, yeah.
to proctor, not even just for our students, but students from other colleges
Sure,
wanting us to proctor. advanced
Okay, so what I'm hearing is. There are a few faculty who are really wedded to Proctorio. For 2 years in a row, COI has been suggesting respondus. Everyone is struggling with wanting to respect faculty choice and yet struggling with the cost. Does this seem a fair summary of where we are? So I'm wondering, would you guys like to vote on this as a recommendation, not now, because we can't, but in the summer or in the beginning of the fall?
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
before that?
Yeah,
So the contract comes up for renewal this summer, so what is our timeline?
Yeah.
You know?
I can ask Jens,
Because we might not meet the deadline.
good question.
I'll go ahead and ask. When the contract.
Because I would approve that if we could meet, beat the deadline.
Right,
But you said there's money for both for a certain amount of time
Yes, and Jens has,
for this coming academic year.
yes. But again, that's not a permanent solution.
no, it's also a lot of money, especially if we don't know how many people.
The lack of user data is.
Precedent when people were forced to change, when we went to campus.
Yep.
Everybody just had to put in some extra hours.
I'm a fan of giving faculty a window to adjust.
Google Docs versus.
Yeah, good point. Elizabeth, Russell, and then we are really going to take an entire 10 minutes to circle back.
Sorry, I just wanna say, if you do like move it again, can we like do it in the fall or something this time? We did this happen last year.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Let's put it on the fall.
We had a presentation in spring, and now we're having another year, we're talking about getting warmer than it again.
So we'll put it there for fall.
We have to renew this summer, so.
Well, we'll find out. Okay, so you guys will get a status update.
So I was gonna clarify. I was all for putting it off until summer if we could meet the purchasing contract deadline. But for my division, I have no intention of voting to keep Proctorio, and my division does not either. So just throw that out there.
Okay, all right. No, do you have a?
Just a couple of things for consideration. I know that the deadline for us to start negotiating with the systems, with the software system is in May. Like they sent out invoices mid-June latest. In fact, some schools have already provided their information. And so it is timely in that sense. And so two things to consider. One is, even if we have the money, is that the fiscally responsible thing to do? And number two, what's best for students? Is it okay for them to navigate two systems? Those are just my two cents for you to consider.
But we got the answer on timing. It's now or next fall. So we're either renewing again.
So then I have one more question. Obviously, this is a discussion item. Is there anything we can do procedurally to move it to a vote or just vote? Can we do that?
Looking at the parliamentarian. Ellen?
I just want to note that some summer classes start in what, 3 weeks?
Excellent.
So I think that would be, if it's not, if we're not going to have access to Proctorio past the start of the new fiscal year, I think it's too late to impose that on faculty who may be teaching summer classes. I don't think that's fair. And it's a very, yeah, and I don't think that serves students either in those summer classes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? Our current subscription to Proctorio ends June 30th. I believe the next round begins July 1st. I can double check that.
Yeah, so if that's the case, that's in the middle of summer
Correct.
term classes, some of them.
That's true.
Okay, so we have. And Brack approved $80,000. $80,000. Move on. So I think I think going to what Joy said, at some point, we're gonna have to make, we're gonna actually have to vote. If we don't do it for this summer, then we should do it ASAP in the first meeting of the fall. And then people will have a full year, if it's voted down, to be able to make that change at a cost of $40,000. So it seems to me that that is more than fair enough time, if that's how the Senate votes. Maybe the Senate votes to keep Proctorio. So what I think we should do now is put it on the agenda for the fall, given the summer classes. But let's vote on it right in the beginning of the year. And that gives people enough time to cope.
Does that mean we can have both respondents and Proctorio, given there's enough money?
Well, it seems that that's what they have approved, Brack has approved.
Well,
So
that's
yes,
fine,
so
that's fine for Brack, but
Yeah,
the
but-
FRC has to be.
the FRC has to do it, but that's why I'm saying in the beginning of to go to this point, right? In the fall, not next spring, in the fall, we'll vote, and then people will know, and you can't say it was a surprise to me, because you will have months.
Yeah, so just to clarify, if we allow for 2, it's only for this next year.
Exactly.
So what we're saying is,
It's a
come fall,
transition year.
we're making a firm decision for
Right.
which of the software we're using.
And that's it.
If
Okay,
it's possible to negotiate down the cost of Proctorio, that can help, and also at the same time, give everybody a window to be able to make the transition.
right, so next year would be a transition year, potentially.
I'm happy to come back in the fall.
You are a pretty much an official Senate member in this meeting yet.
They're like they're like a Senate thing.
We'll keep you trouble. What was that, Jess?
When's the decision to do both or not? Because I think that's a terrible idea doing both.
I
Waste
think
of-
Brack,
waste of money that can be spent elsewhere.
Brack has already made the money, already made the decision about the money.
We've already funded it.
Well,
made the
we
money.
don't
I like
do
that.
anything else for schools. The money's not gone, right?
Well, so I think this is. We have, this next thing that's happening, oops, I just, sorry, I'm just, did you see that? I put my foot somewhere. All right, wait, I'm returning to my former short height instead of my tiny height.
You open the screen.
But let's hear from, I want you guys to hear the update about faculty hiring, which is really important. Right now, what we're saying is we are going to put this on in the beginning of the year. We can certainly do an update. I certainly agree with you. We do not have a ton of money. We seem to be throwing around a chunk of it right now. So if you want to send me something, that would be useful so that we can use that as a point of departure for the summer Senate meeting.
Okay, we start.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Josh, thank you so much. All right, boy, I am
For nature.
for Denise,
sorry.
yeah, right, so,
Not for me, I am all right, thank you.
all right. So I just want to go to why, to Ellen's earlier point about why Demetrius is here. as a person who's been on the pilot steering group for the anti-racist hiring, the cluster hire. We have worked for the entire year together. And I've worked really closely with Demetris. A lot of the issues that have come out, a lot of the concerns are concerns about HR. And so that's in part why I thought it would be useful for you to hear about the hiring process from an HR perspective, rather than imagining what they're saying or doing. And then also, just so that you know, we just had a summary, and maybe this is the place to go into this today with the anti-racist steering committee. And sort of talked about what we learned this year.
Sure, and I did see that this was a discussion, so what I wanted to be able, well, first off, thank you for having me here. I believe this is my first like official meeting, academic senate, so it's been a pleasure. The last 2 years, we have turned our hiring process upside down to fact. It has been completely disrupted, and I think we know from disruption to bring all of that back into some sort of organization, some sort of process takes time, and it takes trial and error, and that is what is happening. So I was happy to come in and be able to share with you some of the things that HR is doing, be able to answer some of your questions, because I think some of the issues and the concerns are, you don't know, right? Because you're not there. We're not necessarily outlining all of our processes to you of everything that we've done to get to where we're at, or why something is taking a little bit longer and you've been waiting. And so to be able to do that, I am not here to make excuses for anything. I am here to say, what's going on? How can we work together? Because you are right, this is a faculty-driven process. We are in the process of trying to implement something that came out of one of your steering committees, which is amazing. The HR team was excited about having this focus on our anti-racist hiring. How can we contribute our expertise in recruitment to what you all are trying to do to help this campus move forward with their goals? So we are, you have our total buy-in for this work and our absolute support. And all that we ask in return is understanding the opportunity for conversation, the opportunity to be able to share information so that we can all move forward, because this is really is for the campus. It's a campus community. And so that's where that's at. My quick update, or I guess update, I was just checking with Perla. So Perla, thank you very much. Just on where we're at with our faculty hiring. If you recall, we went out for 22 positions. We are right now, there's 9 final interviews that are scheduled for next week. There have been 7 contingent offers that have been made. The HR team is in the process of finalizing those offers. Depending upon how long you have been here, you kind of recall everything that happens. When you get a job offer, we say, okay, you know, congratulations. So now this is what I need from you. We need to verify your education. So we need your official transcript. And we need to verify your experience. So we need that information from you. And then you go off to your previous employers. Maybe they're recent, maybe they're much further back in your past. And we wait for that information to come in. And so that's kind of where we're at right now with some of those, in that process of verifying what's needed, getting some of it, that type of thing. So 9 final interviews next week with our administrators. Then there are 7 contingent offers. There was an interview today. That's where that's at. I have received both informally and formally some information, some concerns in regards to some pretty broad areas when it comes to timeline. We are looking at where we can make adjustments with that based upon feedback, some different ways to do things. In regards to timeline, that's being discussed with the steering committee, which includes members of your anti-racist hiring. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Committee.
Yeah.
That committee is included in this steering committee. So we're discussing timeline, how we can approach that. The cluster process this year was very exciting. Because we hadn't done it before, there's not a lot of community colleges that have done it themselves. So in that sense, it was very exciting, but I think in that process, and as we assess what went well, what didn't go well, where we make adjustments. So we'll be looking at that along with, let's see, the MQ screening. We made some adjustments to that this time around. And I will say, I talked about the disruption and kind of the chaos that ensued and how you try to move things forward. I do want to reassure you all as well, that as we listen to you mid-process and we make adjustments and changes, so where it may look like, well, HR is scrambling, what is HR doing? Now, HR is working magic in the background. Rest assured that that's what they're doing, and we are working to accommodate this year. And the faculty hiring process alone, we're talking about over 100 committee members and trying to organize schedules for all of those people and ensure that everyone is where they need to be. In addition to our classified recruitment, so those that work with our classified staff, you recognize that those recruitments way surpass the volume that we're currently recruiting for faculty. The difference is we're not doing it all at one time. So whereas it may look like we're scrambling, we're also trying to accommodate a lot of different people. And maybe on our part, maybe that's something that we need to adjust. And maybe the level of accommodations or the type of accommodations are a little more limited than what they were before. And if that has to be the case, then I would just ask for your support and understanding for something like that to ensure that things are moving forward. But I did hear you all also in regards to transparency, and I take that one on my shoulder and will always work to ensure that I can communicate as much as I can with the goal of helping you understand where we're at and why we're there, and then make adjustments wherever I possibly can. Again, this is something that I want the HR team, I want the faculty, I want to classify staff, just the college to really be able to get behind.
Thank you, Demetrius.
I know we're out of time. I have a question about process in terms of more input. Is there a way we could start a first hour of summer to do the timeline and process more together? Because this is super important. Or is that going to happen at the committee level? Like, how are we going to try to learn from the experience and get feedback and make changes?
We
Because fall
definitely-
starts, we have a timeline already.
Yeah, we definitely want to do that. We talked today about moving the timeline way up. We talked about adding things to the Senate website, using the revamped, what is still in process, but the revamped website. And for maybe for HR of giving people an earlier sense right up front of what the steps are going to be so that people can be working.
And there were a couple recommendations that came in regards to the timeline about lots of time. And like, you're gonna choose schedule A, you're choosing schedule B, and all its glory for all of the dates that are there and getting that buy-in way ahead of time so that everyone has time to adjust their schedule. But in regards to feedback, this is feedback comes in many forms, but it would be very nice to, and I know you all, we did this last year, where feedback was gathered about that pilot hiring process, so that we can take a look at that, because we're also looking at the AP, right? And what adjustments need to be made there. So yes, I believe that is going to.
Just quickly, first of all, thank you. I'm a big fan of this whole process. Not just as a department that's in the process of going through it now, but in general. And I just wanted to clarify, I appreciate also the work that HR has been doing behind the scenes, especially with so many searches now. And I just wanted to clarify that my earlier comment was not saying, it was not at all meaning to dismiss the valuable information we're getting from you. It was about not having the faculty who initiated this process invited to participate in this discussion. It was about believing they should have been invited and included, not believing administrators should be excluded from that conversation.
Well, Jess is one of the founding members of that, so we do have one person here. Okay, in the hopes of being able to leave here just a few minutes late, why don't we do this? We will, we talked about this today. We definitely want to get feedback, right, from the
Absolutely, I mean, that's the only way that this works,
Yeah.
right? That's the only way to get better, so yes.
And we'll be, I hope, sharing the data from that feedback. That didn't happen last year, but we'll see what we can do about sharing that this year.
Absolutely, I don't want to overpromise. You should find an opportunity to be able to share that, and I will say, I'm still kind of crunching the numbers and so I'm not really prepared to share them. Yeah, because I want to make sure what I have is right, but what I see between what we did last year and what we are in the middle of doing this year, just looking at the initial candidate pools, right now, looking at the different steps. There's been a significant change in the diversity, I mean, the diversity has increased. And so I'll go back and look historically at some other numbers, but I mean, it was encouraging and exciting and just anecdotally, that, you know, that's the feedback. that it was as well.
Well, let's leave on that high note, shall we? Hey, happy last minute meeting. Thank you guys so much. Welcome to the new people. Thank you for the people who are leaving. Thank you guys. We are adjourned. We can stop recording and there's still cake. Yeah.
And coffee.
And coffee. Excellent.
Drink up the coffee.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
They tend to Mexico and. Monday.
England was last week.